So you got a date, congratulations, but now what? Now you have to figure out what to say. And there are some conversation topics that will lead to connection, romance, sex, maybe even marriage. And there's other conversation topics that will lead to boredom, animosity, nice to meet you, no second date. How do you pick the right ones? Well, that's what this video is about. I'm gonna get into that right now. So most dates that people go on aren't amazing. And perhaps more to the point, most dates people go on do not lead to sex. And it's actually not surprising at all, because I got a list of the most common topics of conversation on dates, and spoiler alert, they suck. All right, they're not good conversation topics for dates in a lot of different ways. So I'm gonna go through that list and explain to you what's good, what's bad, and what you should actually talk about. Then I went a little further. I actually got ChatGPT to generate a list for me of what are conversation topics that lead to sex in its opinion. This list is a little bit better, but it still has its problems. And finally, I wanna round this out with a few topics I wanna add to the list that I actually use myself and that I know are good. So I wanna talk about all the different things you might talk about on the date, what sucks, what works, what's problematic, and what will actually get a result. Because that's what we're about on this channel, getting results. So let's get into the topics right now. First common conversational topic on a date, personal interests and hobbies. And this is actually not a terrible conversational topic for becoming friends with someone or for building a little bit of just kind of a history and idea of knowing someone. And so in that sense, it's completely fine. But the way that most people talk about this topic will lead to exactly what I said before. It will lead to you being friends. It will not lead to anything romantic, because most people, when they talk about their interests and hobbies, they talk about lists and resumes and how long they've done this. And what you end up with is a very factual conversation. And facts do not lead to romance and sex. Facts lead to friendship and or possibly boredom. And so this is a good thing to have come up in your conversation. But if you are discussing this, you should not be actually just discussing it as itself, right? If you discuss your hobbies, you shouldn't be listing your hobbies. You can talk about what you're passionate about in your hobbies. You can tell stories about your hobbies. So if you are talking about hobbies, you actually should not be talking about hobbies. You should be talking about yourself and your emotions and your character growth and your challenges. So logical conversation about hobbies, which is what most people do, will not work. Emotional conversation about hobbies will work to a certain extent. It will build some level of camaraderie and connection, but even that will not directly lead to sex. You'll end up with a deeper friendship, a more connected friendship, which is good and does have its place, but it will not turn the conversation sexual by itself. Next common conversation topic, travel. And this one's actually pretty decent, but decent with an asterisk. It depends how you talk about it. If you are listing all the places you've traveled to, that's not the greatest, because again, it's factual and logical. That said, a lot of girls are very into travel. And also, talking about travel and having traveled is a high value thing, right? Because traveling is a little bit expensive and it is a little bit exclusive. It makes you seem a little cultural, a little worldly. So talking about travel, especially if you've done a lot of it, can actually boost your perceived value, which is a good thing. And perceived value can help with the girl liking you more, can help with the girl seeing a future with you, and can help with leading to sex. So all of that is good. However, again, when you talk about travel, you should not just be listing countries, and you should not just be talking logically. You should talk about the stories you had while traveling, not the travel itself, not as a list. Or you should talk about the passions or the feelings you had, or that, you know, this was scary, but this was exhilarating. And it's so amazing when like you're away from home and you can take a risk and there's no consequences. These kinds of topics about travel will actually lead toward a more sensual and sexual vibe. Talking about,
oh yeah, when I went to Paris, I saw this building, this statue, and then we went on this bus, and saw this painting.
That is not getting you anywhere near sex. Next common conversation topic, movies and TV. I actually hate this topic. I really genuinely do. I love movies. Personally, I think movies are beautiful. I think movies can take you to incredible places and let you experience things and let you feel things deeply, etc. I get all that. But I personally do not like movies and TV shows as a topic on dates. Here's why. It's very hit or miss, right? If you're sharing, oh, I like this TV show, I like this movie, do you like it, do you not like it? A lot of the time, they either won't have seen it or won't like it. If that's the case, it's not building any camaraderie and it's just like a list of random facts and this and that. If it happens that you and they have a movie or a TV show that you like that's in common, that actually will build a little bit of trust and camaraderie. And guess what? That will make you closer as friends. However, again, it's not about you and her. And the emotions that you're experiencing are not unique emotions. It's not even conveying you. It's conveying what the director wanted or what the character wanted or something like that. So it's a disembodied topic. Typically, when I look at conversations you can have with a girl, I put them into a few categories. There's what I call third-party topics, which means not about you or her. There's about you or her as individuals, and there's about you and her together. And when you're talking about TV and movies, yes, maybe there's a TV show that means something to you, so it's sort of about you, but for the most part, TV and movies are third-party topics. So it's very impersonal compared to other things. Now, there is one potential positive of talking about TV and movies, and that is if the date goes really well and you want an excuse to invite her over for a second date to do Netflix and chill or something like that, having brought up a TV show or a movie or something like that that you could share together, that might make sense. And so it might make sense as an excuse in a conversation that is already going really, really well. So as a logistical tool in a good conversation, specifically maybe for inviting a girl home, but more likely for a second or third date or down the road, it might make sense in that context. But for the most part, TV and movies as a topic, it's not about you, it's not about her, it's about some other disembodied topic. It's just not the absolute best topic. I tend to shy away from this one, except like I said, as a potential logistical move later on. Next common conversation topic, work and career. Now this is an interesting one because this is important information and it is potentially high value information, right? If you have a good job, it's not a bad idea to let the girl know that. And if you are successful and ambitious and there are character traits about you that are conveyed by your work, it's a good thing to let the girl know that. However, talking about work and career is inherently boring and it's inherently not the most fun part of your life. It's probably not the most joyous aspect of your day. And so while it is important to a certain extent that this conversation happen, I would recommend not lingering on it. I'd recommend saying it in a high value way, getting past it and moving on. And definitely conveying the idea that you work in order to live, or you work in order to support your passions, or maybe that what you do you're very passionate about, but right now you're here with this girl and you don't want to talk about work. Those tend to be the ways I would address this. You do not want to get into the minutia of your day-to-day routine, or you do not want to get into a technical conversation about exactly how you perform your work, that sort of stuff. This is a good topic if it is high value for you to have the information exist in the conversation. Typically, I would not try to bring this up. I would not try to ask about it. But if she does ask you about your work and your career, convey it in a high value way and move on. Only if she really pursues it and asks further questions should you continue with it. And even then, you might want to just take the vibe of, yeah, it's cool. I like it. I'm very proud of it. But this is not really what I want to talk with on a date with a cute girl. Let's talk about us for now. I'll tell you all about my work later on. Maybe if you get to know me, I'll take you to the office one day. But that said, right now, us is more important than that. Next common conversation topic, current events. Just fucking avoid this one. Like, absolutely, this is the worst, especially in today's day and age when everything's hyper political. Absolutely not, right? I've said for a long time, the topics you don't want on dates are religion and politics. And as soon as you go current events, it's going to become political, right? Also, we talked about third-party topics, you and her topics separately and you and her topics together. Current events are third-party topics. So by their nature, they're not escalating things in a man-to-woman way. They're not moving things forward. And also, they are contentious in the wrong way. All right, we talk about tension, right? You want the right kind of tension. You want sexual tension. You want fun tension. You want tension over whether the two of you like each other. You don't want tension over which political candidate's going to get elected, or what your view on like welfare or abortion or some shit is, okay? Stay clear of those topics, please. The next common conversation topic, food and drink. This to me is a little bit like travel, but kind of worse, right? So in talking about food and drink, there is an opportunity to convey some value, right? If you happen to have been to some good restaurants, that conveys you as, you know, maybe someone with some money, maybe someone with some taste, maybe someone with some life experience. Additionally, the topic of food and drink is inherently a sensual, emotional one to an extent, so you do have that going for you. However, again, it is a third-party topic, and it is the type of topic that lends itself to a lot of lists and resume type stuff as opposed to deep emotional stuff. So my thoughts on this one are this. Some girls are very into food, and if when a girl starts talking about food, she gets really excited, by all means, talk about food with her. But if the food conversation is at all logical or at all listy or it just seems like a resume thing, get through it quickly, move on, get on to the next. Next common conversation topic, music. I'm a biased source on this one because I am not very into music and I don't know a lot about music. So I personally stay clear of this one by a long way because I don't want to be in a topic where I know nothing, right? A girl refers to a very popular musical artist and I don't even know who it is. It makes me look like I'm out of touch, makes me look like I don't know what I'm talking about. So I stay clear of this one. If you happen to know a lot about music, it's not actually that bad, but this is another one that's in that same category of sort of like food and travel, where it is a cool thing, and if you happen to share a certain passion about it, and you happen to have a commonality on it, it can be very, very cool, right? If you and the girl are into the same artist, that can be a very positive thing on a deep level. But for a lot of girls, your taste just isn't going to match and it's not going to be the biggest thing. So I would say the same thing as with kind of food and travel. If she seems excited and passionate about it and you can actually speak knowledgeably about it without seeming like an idiot,
like I would because I don't know anything about it,
then by all means you can engage with it a bit. But it's not something I would be going out of my way to bring up as a conversation topic. If she brings it up and she's passionate about it, by all means participate. If not, it's not the best one. Again, it is third party. It is sort of emotional, right? People do have emotions about music and they do have feelings about particular songs. So it is kind of about you and her, but fundamentally it's about a third party more so than it's about you and her. So it's not the ideal topic, again, unless she's showing you through her behavior that it's a very sensual thing for her. The next two common conversational topics I actually want to address together, and they are family and friends and personal anecdotes. And the reason I want to address them together is because the family and friends topic is actually really good when it is in fact personal anecdotes, but otherwise it's not so good. And personal anecdotes themselves are a great conversation topic. See, in general, when you're conveying your own life history, your own personal journey, when you're conveying your likes and dislikes, your philosophies, the things that are unique about you, that is when you're offering value to the conversation. That's when the girl is having a unique conversation with you that she can't have with any other individual on the planet. So those types of topics are good, and that is personal anecdotes, and especially personal anecdotes that come from a high-value phrase, i.e. positive personal anecdotes. Now, if you're talking about friends and family and you're just giving a list of how many siblings you have, or if you're going into, long-winded tirades about what your dad is like, she's not on a date with your dad or your mom or your sister. She is on a date with you. So to the extent that your past history with family and friends affects or informs on you, it is very, very useful. And to the extent that that can be a mirror through which you can show her who you are, it can be very, very useful. But personal anecdotes are absolutely great. Again, going to conversation topics, third party, you and her, and the two of you together. This is it's a lot about you, but it's sort of about you and her together. Because when you talk about how you've interacted with friends and family in the past, if she's gonna be your girlfriend, if she's gonna be someone who's friend, family kind of associated, well, that's probably how you're interacting with her. So it's a great way for you to show her what you and her together might be like. So the personal anecdotes and family and friends as it is conveyed as personal anecdotes are great conversation topics. Final common topic, dreams and aspirations. And this, again, is a very good one. Because when you're talking about your dreams and aspirations, you're conveying a lot about yourself. Also, dreams and aspirations reflect on the future. And if you're on a date with a girl, she's considering a future with you, and you're considering a future with her. So your dreams and aspirations are a look into what she could expect from you or what life you're building towards, potentially with her if she stays with you. So when we look at the three categories, third party topic, you and her isolated, you and her together, dreams and aspirations are at least about you and her isolated, but it's quite possibly about you and her together, because if you're building something together, that's what you're building towards. Also, dreams and aspirations gives you a great platform for conveying ambition, potentially future success, and it's a great way to convey your philosophies, your beliefs, all these things we talked about before, which are your value adds to the conversation, the things that are unique to you. And again, it's conveying you in a very, very positive way, because she has to assume when you're talking about your dreams that there's some chance those dreams will actually come true. And in hearing about the dreams, she has to imagine a world in which they've come true, i.e. a world in which you are your best self. So dreams and aspirations is another great topic to bring up in the conversation. So as we've looked at that list, we've seen that some of the conversation topics are very boring and very platonic and will lead to friends at best, or possibly not a very good conversation at all. And we've seen that some of them will lead to a more personal, intimate conversation. However, none of them will directly by themselves lead to a sexual conversation. So these kinds of topics may lead to connection, they may lead to friendship, they may even lead to depth of relationship. But if these are all the topics you have and you're talking about them in a politically correct sort of way, i.e. you're not taking other risks in addition, you probably are not going to lead to a very sexual vibe. And so this next list is designed to enhance the previous list and maybe get you out of the friend zone and into the hookup sex, relationship, something like that zone. The first of the conversation topics that might or might not lead to sex is past relationships. And this is a really, really interesting choice because yes, it definitely is sexual in nature. And yes, it definitely is relationship-y in nature. So when we talk about the three categories, third-party topics, you and her isolated, you and her together, it's definitely at least about you and her. And it's very much potentially about you and her together because there's this idea that your past relationships are likely to be like your future relationships. However, the problem with this topic is that while it does bring up relationships and it does bring up sexuality, it can be very, very hit or miss, right? So if you start talking about the girl's past relationships and who she's been with and it's very different from you, that could be problematic. Or if you start bringing up your past relationships and you happen to touch on a sensitive topic that's a problem for her, that could really throw you off. So this is a very risky one. It could go really well, it could go quite badly. And for that reason, I tend to stay away from it myself because I have a lot of confidence in my ability to bring up sexual topics and bring up all the good things that you can get out of discussing past relationships without bringing up the potential negatives. Now, if you are forced into this conversation topic, if you have to talk about your exes, what I would suggest is this. Don't seem like you're still in love with them. Don't seem like you're still wrapped up in them and still all about them. On the other hand, don't seem like you're negative and bitter towards them. What you'd like to have as kind of the vibe is that, yes, you had these past relationships. Yes, they were valuable life experiences and you've learned from them and grown because of them. And you will always, be happy you had those experiences. However, you've moved on and you're at a different place now. That's kind of the vibe you want to have if you are forced into this topical area. And again, it could go well, but it's like you're walking in a minefield. You're walking in a minefield full of candy bars, right? There's a reason to be there. There's some sweetness there, but there's also a lot of danger. So I tend to avoid it. But it does do the job of making the conversation sexual and relationship-y and intimate. So I will give credit where it's due there. It's just a dangerous way to do it. The next conversation topic that might or might not lead to sex is physical affection preferences. And this is a really, really interesting topic. I think this is a great thing to talk about. However, it's a really dangerous subject to bring up. So if the conversation has naturally gone that way because there's a lot of intimacy and there's already some physicality going on, great. Or if she brings up this topic, great. However, I don't suggest you should be bringing it up. Because if you start bringing up what are your preferences of how you like to be touched or what are your preferences for sex too early, it's too forward, a little bit creepy, and a little bit overly focused on sex. Right? It's very agenda. It's very
I have an outcome and I'm very sexual.
Right? It makes you seem a little like a pervert, right? You don't want to go too far that direction without a lot of encouragement from her, let's say. So again, if this topic comes up naturally, which it oftentimes will actually after sex, then it's a great topic. But trying to bring it up before sex when she's not ready for it or when it's not coming up naturally will tend to make it seem like sex is the only thing on your mind. So if she brings it up, great. If she doesn't bring it up, I would typically steer clear. And this actually brings up an important distinction, which is there are some conversation topics that will lead to a sexual conversation, and there are some conversation topics that will lead to actual sex, right? It is necessary that you be able to have a sexual conversation in order to lead to sex, but not all sexual conversations will lead there. For example, if you're bringing up sexual topics and she's rejecting them, or you're bringing up sexual topics and it's making her think you have an agenda, then yes, you will succeed in having a sexualized conversation, but you won't necessarily succeed in getting to sex. Next conversation topic, desires and fantasies. Well, this is very similar to the previous one in that this is the kind of thing that often you would talk about after sex, right? Once you've already had sex with someone, you would probably talk about this. Well, maybe once you've had sex with them a few times. And so similar to the previous topic, if it comes up naturally and organically, awesome. That's great. If she wants to talk about this and she's trying hard to talk about this, by all means, let her and by all means participate. But if you're going out of your way to talk about it too early, it might make her think you have only one thing on your mind, which while it will sexualize the conversation, may actually make it harder for you to get to sex. Next conversation topic that may or may not lead to sex, boundaries and comfort levels. Let's hope that this one doesn't come up because this one has such a possibility and such a potential of derailing things. You see, this is a logical conversation about a sexual topic. So number one, if the girl starts mentioning and talking about her boundaries, that's putting her in a very logical anti-sex headspace, which is the opposite of what you would like for sensuality and progression. And especially, this is the kind of conversation that changes over time. So someone's boundaries with someone they've just met are very different than someone's boundaries with someone they know very well. So if this boundaries conversation comes up in the first 5 minutes, it's going to be a much different conversation than if it comes up 2 hours in or 3 months into the conversation. So I'll give you a very interesting anecdote to illustrate this point. So I was doing a boot camp in the year 2021, near the start of the year, right after everything had just opened up post-COVID. And I was in Miami with some guys out at a club, out at a bar. One of my students walked up to a girl wearing a face mask, and he went to go say hi to her and went to shake her hand. And instead of shaking the hand, she gave him like the, no, we'll do elbows, no, I don't handshake, that kind of thing. But in any case, he stayed and kept talking to her, and the conversation, lo and behold, became actually good. And she started laughing, started enjoying the conversation. They talked a little bit more, and then eventually he invited her to come dance with him. And lo and behold, she took his hand and went and danced with him. They started dancing, started touching a whole lot more than handshaking. And then they kept interacting beyond that. And at a certain point, he just said, you know, can you take your mask down? I want to see what your face looks like. And guess what? She took it off. And guess what? 5 minutes later, they were kissing. All right. So her boundary before she knew him was, I won't shake your hand. Her boundary 20 minutes later was, I'm fine with kissing you. All right. So this boundaries conversation, the sooner it comes up, the worse it is for you. Because once the girl has said, these are my boundaries, and she's explicitly, factually put that out there in a logical way, it's going to be hard for her to back away from it. So this is a conversation topic you want to not have come up in the conversation until as late as humanly possible. Next conversational topic that may or may not lead to sex: personal views on intimacy. I think this is an amazing conversation topic. However, you have to address it in the right way, because if you and the girl have drastically different personal views on intimacy, that can be sort of a record scratch moment that kind of makes you go,
oh, wait, I was feeling so good about this and maybe not so much.
And the very fact that the girl is bringing up this topic, or the very fact the girl is engaging in this topic with you, is a really good sign that things are going well. So if you are on a date and a girl starts asking, what is your view on love or romance or intimacy? That's a really good sign things are going well. However, it's a little bit dangerous. So this is a great topic, but I recommend being a little bit vague in your answers. These are the type of answers you want to give. You want to give answers that are not going to give you that record scratch moment. Okay, so if a girl's asking things like, do you think you have to be in love before having sex, right? That's a dangerous question in a way, right? Because if you say yes, then that may mean that she's thinking, oh, you don't have sex until many dates in, or I should delay a lot in order to have sex with this guy. If you say no, that may make it seem like you take sex very casually and very cheaply. It may make you seem slutty or playerish or something along the lines of that. So the answer you typically want to give is somewhere in the middle. You want to give an answer that is like, well, I think it certainly enhances the experience, but I think that, you know, waiting till XYZ for, you know, to have sex, then you don't know if you have any chemistry with someone, et cetera. So you probably want to give these kind of sitting on the fence in the middle, safe answers to these types of questions. But the fact that this type of topic is coming up is a very, very good sign when it does come up. Next conversation topic that may or may not lead to sex: views on public displays of affection. I absolutely hate this topic. This is super judgmental about sex and super logical. If this is what's coming up, this is an anti-sexual topic. Yes, you're talking about sex, and yes, you're talking about intimacy, but you're talking about it in the negative. You're judging.
Ooh, I would never do that. Ooh, they should get a room.
It's very rare the girl's gonna be like,
Yeah, they should fuck right in front of us.
right? It's very unlikely that the girl's gonna be like, yes, I love PDA, and I think we should do tons of it, and I think that couple over there should be doing more PDA. Typically, the nature of this conversation when it comes up is that it's negative and judgmental. And being negative and judgmental about sex is very far away from a topic that's going to lead you towards sex. So I would recommend staying away from these topics and not bringing them up. So those are some ideas from the internet about what's good to talk about on a date and what conversation topics may or may not allegedly lead to sex. But I want to finish with a few topics of my own that are field tested and proven to actually lead to sex in the real world. And the first one of these topics is sort of risque drinking games. They don't have to be done as drinking games, but games like Truth or Dare, Never Have I Ever, or the question game are great examples of topics that can lead to sex. And the way these essentially work is that you're asking escalating questions, or you're doing escalating topics. So let's take as an example the question game, one of my personal favorites. The way it works is we take turns asking questions. I ask the question, you answer honestly. You ask me the question, I answer honestly. Pretty basic game. But the reason it's going to work is because you're going to play it by choosing some sort of risque topics but not super sexual, and then gradually escalating each time it comes back to you. And the girl is probably going to follow suit because there's a sort of competitive nature where you want to one-up someone. So you might start in talking about tattoos and piercings, for example, and then she might continue with other things parents didn't approve of when you were growing up. And that might lead to drinking and partying, which might lead to stories of what happened at after parties, which leads to a sexual conversation, right? So there's this natural escalation that happens with these sorts of games, and that's why they are a great sort of format or a great sort of conversation topic to bring up. Next amazing conversation topic I highly suggest is what I call future adventure projections, or you can think of this as like make-believe future stories of you and her. And these can be joking or serious. But the idea of what are we going to do in the future, either teasingly or seriously, is automatically in the right category. Because again, you have third-party topics, you and her separate, you and her together. By the nature of this, you're talking about you and her together. And because it's make-believe, you can make stuff up without a lot of risk, right? You can say, oh, we do this and this crazy thing that happens to have a sexual undertone, and you both know you're making it up. You both know it's silly. You both know it's not real, and so it allows you to role play within it in a lot of ways that would be slutty or inappropriate if you were doing it for real. So the future adventure projection, or again, making up future scenarios for the two of you in either playful or semi-serious ways, is an amazing, amazing topic that I highly, highly recommend. The third topic that I highly recommend isn't really a topic per se, it's a topic within a topic. And this is one of the absolute key things I do on every single one of my dates, which is this. Whatever the conversation topic is, as I'm listening, I'm thinking to myself, how is this possibly intimate? How is this possibly sexual? How could this lead to sexual topics? And then I will interrupt or interject into normal conversations a little bit of sexual tease, a little bit of innuendo, and then I will go right back to the normal conversation. So it's not like I'm trying to steer the whole conversation sexual. It's not like I'm trying to hijack it. But when the girl does say something that can be misconstrued, it's useful to misconstrue it. It's useful to bring up these little bits of sex, these little emotional spikes within a logical conversation. Whenever there's a chance to misinterpret something sexually, whenever there's a chance to act like she's hitting on me, whenever there's a chance to act like she said something more sexual in meaning than it was, I'm going to be aware of it, and I might take advantage of it, and I might bring that up in the conversation as well. So that's not a topic in and of itself, but it's a topic within a topic that can make any topic more sexual and is incredibly useful on all your dates. So I've just gone through a ton of different topics, and that's a lot of information. But what is the general summary? Well, there's a few key points. Number one, third-party topics, you and her isolated, you and her together. You want to be moving in this direction. Number two, if you're too scared to talk about sex, you're probably not going to have sex. However, there is a difference between talking about sex and having sex, right? You don't want to talk about sex in a way that puts up walls or that creates a lot of resistance. So you do want to bring up sex, but you don't want to force it. Also, if she brings up these more sexual topics, they're much more okay than if you bring them up. So even though I've said certain topics are risky for you to bring up, if she brings them up, they're completely in play. Final, absolutely key takeaway, there is a fundamental difference between the kind of conversation that will lead to you being good friends and a conversation that will lead to sex. And while those friendly aspects and while those friendly connection aspects are necessary and useful, if that's all you have, you are going to end up in the friend zone. You do need to take a risk at some point. So hopefully you enjoyed that video and you learned a lot from it. If you like these technical videos where I break down game in excruciating detail, you're probably gonna like my course, The System, which is my entire step-by-step process from meet to sex to relationship to whatever it is you're looking for. You might wanna check that out. Beyond that, hope you enjoyed it. Be sure and like, subscribe, post your comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.